Good morning from the Freedom of Information and Privacy Association. I'm Patrick Farnsworth, and this is your Access and Privacy Online News Summary for Saturday, December 21st. In this week's show, with the holidays upon us, we'll start with a review of local stories across Canada, including one municipality addressing its use of artificial intelligence. Then we'll look south of the border to the United States, where preparations for the inauguration of Donald Trump intersect with the fields of information and privacy. And finally, we'll wrap up with a look at some cybersecurity reminders for the season and a preview of what's ahead for the podcast as we close out the year. As always, you can find the full stories by clicking the links in the show notes and reading more on our website. Stay tuned as we unpack these stories and more. Starting with local stories in Canada. From Celeste Percy Beauregard, LGI reporter at the Hamilton Spectator. Starting in Ontario, the Brant Haldimand Norfolk Catholic District School Board has elected a new chair. The board emphasized renewed leadership to address key issues such as transparency, budget planning, and addressing growing student needs. The new chair has been elected following months of scrutiny over a European trip for art procurement that the previous chair and 3 of the other trustees originally expensed to the board. According to documents obtained via a Freedom of Information request, trustees spent more than $15,000 on hotels in both Italy and Germany, $510 on alcohol, $1,610 on a single fancy restaurant meal, and $28,000 on flights. From David Gomez, LGI reporter at the Middlesex Banner. In a groundbreaking move, Middlesex County Council has approved a comprehensive AI policy. This initiative aims to regulate how artificial intelligence is used in municipal operations, balancing efficiency with accountability and privacy concerns. The policy draws on best practices from frameworks such as Canada's Directive on Automated Decision-Making and the Gov AI Coalition. It includes specific measures to safeguard resident data, ensure human oversight, and mitigate biases in AI systems. It also strives to ensure compliance with privacy and data security regulations, such as Ontario's Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. The policy mandates algorithmic impact assessments for any new AI tools adopted by Middlesex County to evaluate potential risks and ensure it lives up to privacy laws and ethical standards. Over in Manitoba, from Maggie McIntosh, LGI reporter at the Winnipeg Free Press, reports that schools are grappling with the impact of a significant cyber attack. Teachers, students, and support staff in the Pembina Trails School Division remain without Wi-Fi more than a week after a cyber attack resulted in a network-wide outage. Officials reported disruptions to critical services, including report cards and exams. In the meantime, the board office has reassured families and employees that there is no indication of a data breach involving their personal information. The situation highlights the increasing cybersecurity threats faced by educational institutions. Meanwhile, in Alberta, Brett McKay, LGA reporter at the St. Albert Gazette, brings us a report obtained through a Freedom of Information request revealing that over 300 COVID-19 outbreaks occurred in acute care facilities last year. Dr. Joe Vipond, an emergency physician in Calgary and co-founder of the Canadian COVID Society, said it is worrisome that patients are being harmed and that steps aren't taken to adequately protect them. The findings highlight ongoing challenges in managing public health emergencies within high-risk healthcare environments. Shifting to a few national stories. The housing crisis has been voted the Canadian Press News Story of the Year. This reflects the widespread impact of housing affordability and availability, which continues to dominate national discussions. The Canadian Press reported that internal documents obtained through an Access to Information request shows federal public servants warned the government 2 years ago that large increases to immigration could affect housing affordability and services. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who was at first indignant in the face of critiques, made a pivot on immigration as its impact on affordability became difficult to deny. Previous changes this year include rolling back pandemic-era changes to the temporary foreign worker program and capping international student permits. In preparation for the recent U.S. election, Canadian officials explored new opportunities regardless of the outcome. The memos obtained by the Canadian press through the Access to Information Act provide insight into the federal strategy to not only weather but also capitalize on what promised to be a turning point for its closest ally. Internal memos show a strategic focus on maintaining strong cross-border relations while adapting to shifting political landscapes. The memo shows officials at Canada's Foreign Ministry were quietly laying international groundwork early this year to help manage a possible Trump victory. A briefing note prepared in late January states Canada has an interest in locking in progress made since 2020 and is preparing for all possible outcomes. Shifting to the United States, the IRS has recovered $4.7 billion in unpaid taxes. However, the agency now embraces for significant funding cuts as Donald Trump and the GOP take power, sparking concerns about enforcement capabilities moving forward. Taxes collected include $475 million in proceeds from criminal and civil cases that came from whistleblower information. It also includes taxes from high-income taxpayers who did not pay overdue tax debts and related to IRS criminal investigation work into crimes like drug trafficking and terrorist financing. In a major settlement, Grubhub has agreed to pay $25 million over deceptive practices. The Illinois Attorney General and FTC led the case, holding the food delivery giant accountable for misleading consumers. It was found Grubhub lied about benefits of a membership, how much drivers could make, and listed restaurants on its app without their knowledge or consent, and in some cases, over their objections. Grubhub denied wrongdoing, claiming the company is committed to openness in its practices and said it cooperated with the FTC in its multi-year review. In Wisconsin, law enforcement has gone quiet regarding the investigation of a recent school shooting. Families and communities are left seeking answers as authorities face pressure to ensure transparency while protecting sensitive details. Scrutiny to be more transparent comes from Wisconsin Freedom of Information Council President Bill Leaders. The medical examiner released the names of those killed, but the state's crime victims privacy law barred releasing the names of those injured. Tension over police not releasing information has spilled over into a news conference where Madison Police Chief Sean Barnes left without taking questions. In Arizona, the governor has urged the state to stop collecting abortion data, citing concerns over patient privacy. A handful of Democratic-controlled states have reduced reporting requirements in recent years out of concern about privacy. Many states have banned abortion at all stages of pregnancy, or after roughly the first 6 weeks, before many people know they're pregnant. This move raises broader questions about balancing public health reporting with individual rights. As always, you can find links to these stories in the show notes, and be sure to check out our consideration of abortion as a privacy and reproductive health right with Cynthia Koo. Finally, in Montana, a judge has blocked a state rule that prevented transgender individuals from updating their sex on legal documents. The decision has been welcomed as a victory for privacy and equal rights. The judge disagreed with the state's argument that discrimination on the basis of transgender status is not discrimination on the basis of sex. The hearing was the latest volley in a series of laws, rules, and legal challenges over efforts by Republicans in Montana and many other states to limit the rights of transgender residents. As the holiday season brings increased digital activity, it is a good time to review your cybersecurity. A simple but effective tip: protect your communications by using encryption tools to safeguard your private messages and data from prying eyes. Privacy advocates are also a big fan of Signal, which applies end-to-end encryption on all messages and voice calls. The independent nonprofit group behind the app promises to never sell, rent, or lease customer data and has made its source code publicly available so that it can be audited by anyone to examine it for security and correctness. That brings us to the end of this episode of Access and Privacy Online, and our last news summary for the year. This week saw a lot of activity, including a successful FIPA annual general meeting and some exciting recordings for the podcast. To close out the year, we're bringing you a special series of sit-down discussions with FIPA President Mike Larson, Executive Director Jason Woiwada, and the staff behind major FIPA activity. Tune in as Jerica Karuhara speaks about pathways to precarity. Gage Smith breaks down the office of the Special Interlocutor Report. Ryan Rutley reviews leading and trailing language as well as FIPA's submission to the Foreign Interference Commission. And Spencer Eisen will update us on his activities with access assessments. Each episode will be released over the coming weeks. We hope today's stories were insightful and helped you stay informed about the latest developments in privacy, information management, and public transparency. To keep the mics on, subscribe through FIPA News Monitoring or consider a donation. Our writer is Sean Fisk. Original music by The Mysterious, Breakmaster Cylinder. I'm Patrick Farnsworth, your host and producer. Thank you for joining. As always, and particularly at this time of year, a big FIPA thank you to all our contributors, reporters, and listeners. Just a personal aside, as the host and producer of this podcast, it has been a great pleasure to work with everyone who is behind this podcast, from Mike Larson to Jason Waiwata to Sean Fisk, and all of the many contributors that we've had over the past several months. Really an educational process for me personally, and I hope for you as well. And it's been a great honor to work with everyone this year. We'll be back January 11th, 2025 with our regular news summaries. All the best to you and yours this holiday season. Stay safe and stay informed.